It was a great weekend. And I mean that. I do. I mean, I thought obviously the weather was awesome. I don't know that I would have told you that it was the hottest game in Camp Randall history. I think that might have to go back and check the records. But it was a really, really good environment, good atmosphere. It was great to see, obviously, everybody, but in particular the student section as well. I'm not sure exactly what time they all got filed in there, but I know that it was definitely something that I was excited about seeing. It was awesome. I know we talked about the whole end of the third quarter, the jump around. I appreciate the situation that we were in because I got to enjoy for 30 or 40 seconds there. So that was great. And I got to say that because I don't want to sound ungrateful, right? I think after the game, I probably wasn't as fired up as maybe I needed to be because winning is not easy, and ultimately that's what it comes down to. And deep down inside, I just felt like we were sloppy. And I think that's where, to me, it's hard to be really, really excited when you just don't play the sound way, and some things that we had put a great emphasis on. And it's awesome because it gives us an opportunity to kind of come back here this second week and this entire, practice opportunities to really kind of focus ourselves back in and to recognize the things that we didn't do as well. But there's some great things as well. I mean, I think that obviously the way we ran the football is to be noted for sure, right? I mean, both Ches and Braylon had incredible days. I know there's some stat with, the leading rushers in the Big Ten and only 100-yard rushers, maybe on the weekend in the bigger conferences. So they had a great, and I think that was awesome for them. It was awesome for us to set a kind of a tone and a tempo to make sure everybody understands that, we're a physical football team. We're going to run the football. We were good defensively on third downs, maybe not as well as the stats look. I think there was a few of those third and longs that they got into situations where they could go for them on fourth down. But if you really look at it, I think that's the difference in the ball game. I think they were 2 of 15 on third and fourth down, and we were exceptionally well, had done exceptionally well on fourth down. So there's a lot of really good things to build upon, and as we go into this week, we're going to definitely build upon those things.
Luke, I don't know how much you've looked at what Washington State's quarterback can do. Have you okay?
Yeah, quite a bit.
Okay, a little. I just didn't know how far along you were, but a little different than the guy you just faced. Now, their coach said they want him to stay in the pocket more than he's been in the past. But is he still a threat if your rush lanes are not where they need to be?
Oh yeah, I don't think he ran as much as last year as he did in game one, and I think maybe that's what they're kind of referring to, but. It was a situation that they were in, and he was aggressive, and I think that, it's definitely noticeable, different than what probably we had watched from our game last year. I didn't watch a ton of other things on them last year, watching a little bit more, for them in particular, what kind of offense they are this year, and obviously studying game one. But I think that there are some definitely differences to him. His ability, his aggressive nature, I think, running the football is probably the one thing that I noticed more than anything.
Luke, it seems like Tanner maybe has slowed down his snaps a little bit to make sure that they're accurate after some struggles in the spring. How do you think, does it affect the offense at all, or are you okay with that trade-off?
I'm not sure what you mean by slowed down his snaps.
The snaps themselves are a little bit slower than he was trying to do in the spring.
Oh, you mean actually the speed of the snap? Yeah, okay, I thought you meant the speed of the tempo of the game. No, I don't. I mean, I think everything's about getting a little bit of comfort level. I think that's why it's such a unique connection between the quarterback and the center. Just, sometimes it's a little bit more of how the quarterback wants it as well. And ultimately, I'm sure the quarterback would say, I don't care how you get it back, how fast it's best if it's in a certain location. But I think there's a lot of growth there too. I think what we had on Saturday was much better than maybe even the spring and even sometimes in fall camp. So I think Tanner, obviously being his first year really playing center, has grown a lot and can do nothing but get better at it.
Luke, you emphasized in the offseason with this team, they went 1-4 in games decided in the fourth quarter last season. This was one of those games. How much will you discuss last season, even though you guys weren't here as a staff, and is that part of the messaging going into this one?
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, you studied last year as well because it's still a lot of the personnel, right? And so a lot of the things that you're looking at least offensively from them last year, there's some similarities, obviously, what they've done, but you're looking more at personnel, tendencies and things like that, whether they're offensive linemen, whether they're the backs, and obviously the quarterback. But I don't know that we're, making an overemphasis on what the situation was last year. I think the guys that were here understand it and know that. There's a lot of other things for us to focus on, being our first, road trip, road challenge, and obviously a great challenge for us. But no matter what, this is one of the games that we've talked about how to finish. And so the emphasis on finishing will continue to be, pounded in the entire week. And I would probably tell you that it's probably going to be pounded the entire season.
Luke, since we're still trying to get to know you a little bit, have you learned anything over the years about getting the team ready to play on the road? Do you have key things that you need to see during a week or in the lead up?
No, I don't know that there's any in particular. I think that you just got to do things a little bit earlier. You got to make sure that, the idea of what you would get and even rest and some things like that late in the week, you don't get as much of it when you're going on the road. I think the idea that, specific things, offensive and defensive, that you have to do to be successful on the road is critical. And, I'm not telling you something that any other coach wouldn't tell you, but, you can't go on the road and turn the ball over. You can't go on the road and not be able to run the football. You can't go on the road and, have incredible amount of penalties. Those are things that are really difficult when you're in an environment that's not your own to overcome. So that whole idea of being disciplined and playing clean that we emphasized last week, and why I didn't feel like we played the way we should, and that sloppiness is the things that are going to be key for this week.
Luke, you keep talking about playing clean, and that's kind of your catchphrase, so to speak. I'm curious, what does that mean to you? Can you define it, and what does that look like for your football team?
No, we emphasize aggressive. So when we talk about playing clean, it's kind of the pre and post snap penalties, and that's where we were good yesterday or on Saturday. No pre-snap penalties, no post-snap penalties. But also it's taking care of the football. That's just playing clean. That's leveraging the football defensively and tackling well. And those are the three areas that when you talk about being clean that we were not very good on Saturday. Good on the pre and post snap, but the other 2 or 3 areas about leveraging the football defensively, playing with great leverage in the passing game, and tackling well. Those are going to be obviously things that if we don't get corrected will be a Achilles heel for us all year.
Luke, kind of a two-parter here. First, with Jordan's suspension, is that something that you and the program are looking to appeal? And then second, how did you assess how Jake Cheney played, potentially having a bigger role even coming up if Jordan is missing the first half?
Well, yeah, I don't expect to have Jordan. There's an appeal out there, but, I don't know. I think you got 24 hours, so we should hear for sure, but, we're not counting on that. We'll learn from it and continue to move on. The good fortune for us is I think we got 3 starting inside linebackers. I wouldn't say we have 2. I wouldn't say that Jake Cheney is not a starter and wasn't a starter. So I don't think we miss, a whole lot. Obviously we miss Jordan, but I don't think that you're like, oh, you're out of a starter. What we don't have is the depth. We don't have the ability to roll as much, and that's tough. But Jake did a great job. I thought he played a really good football game. I know he wasn't as fired up as I was about his game. As I called him up after the game, and he was, kind of curious as to why he'd be up there, because I don't think I played that well. But what he provides energy-wise, what he provides in flexibility for us to be able to do, he provides a lot. So excited for him. It's another opportunity for him. But he also knows that we need Jordan too, and it looks like we're getting back to second half.
Luke, if I remember correctly, on your last radio show before the opener, you talked about the fact that tackling was going to kind of keep you up at night because you didn't do it. Do you think that was a factor, or sometimes first games can be a contributing factor?
Yeah, I think
as well?
Twofold. I think that the ability for us to play what's more control. I think that, we don't talk about that a whole lot. We talk more about the effort and the energy and your ability to play fast. And, maybe there was a little bit more of an emphasis on that and not as much of, fast as you can play but still be under control. And so I kind of had a feeling that might be that way, but I think everybody's a little bit different. And I think if I look back at it, I'd say, okay, now after being in game 1, maybe we should have tackled a little bit more in the spring. Maybe we should have tackled in fall camp. I didn't have an effect on our running backs. They did a good job at taking care of the football, and when they had opportunity to make people miss, they weren't out of practice of making guys miss. So, you can always look back at it, but I think most importantly that, in some ways you knew you had to be able to play through that, especially in the first game.
Luke, when you're going against an offense like Washington State, excuse me, that runs as much up-tempo as they do, how big is it for your defense that that's kind of an offense that they've been going up against all throughout spring and fall?
Yeah, I think this is going to be faster than what we've been probably experiencing for the most part through spring and through fall. So the good news is we've gotten some work at it, but it's always different when all of a sudden you get, especially go on the road, you get in a new environment, you get the anxiety of an actual game. So those kinds of things are really critical. And on that whole idea of being clean, I think the one thing that sometimes the pace of the game and the tempo of the game can do to you is cause you some of that, those issues, and so if you're not sound and you're not clean in what you're doing, sometimes the tempo will affect you even more. So that's why I think we've got our work cut out for us. And I think in the way we prepare for this, and not just like say, okay, well we've handled tempo because our offense gives us to it. All spring and all fall camp. There's a difference to it, and the things that kind of showed up a little bit defensively in particular in week one were the things that will even be highlighted more with this pace of the game.
Luke, I know coaches always emphasize turnovers, but Washington State's quarterback had 3 fumbles last week. I mean, is that something that you talk to your linebackers, your D linemen a little bit more about this week and kind of emphasize?
We emphasize it every week, and we didn't end up getting any last week. I think and it's not like, well, you dropped one interception or you had an opportunity. No, every time they run the football, there's an opportunity to knock the ball loose, and so it's not just those shots that you had where the ball was in the air. It's something we talk about every week. I think it's a great equalizer, especially going on the road. Maybe there are some ball security issues, but a couple of those ones from last week were bad snaps. And I think the ball's on the ground, and obviously it falls on the shoulders of the quarterback. But I think there's a little bit of a connection there that I'm sure are some of those things that they'll be talking about that they've got to really clean up from week one.
Luke, it seemed like Alexander Smith and Nazir Forkaran split reps in that press man role. What do you like about the pairing between them and Rico Holman, and what did you see from Nazir this past week?
He stepped in there and did a great job. I mean, we had a plan to be able to play both those guys more in particular into the boundary. Just with the way the game, I think, was going, we didn't put Nazir over to the field and give him a little bit more of a break from Rico, even though there was more action to the field than sometimes you get. But I thought both those guys did a great job. I thought we knew going in there that we wanted to be able to roll those guys. We don't want them to have to play all 70, 80 snaps, whatever it is that we ended up playing. But we got to find a way to be able to do that with Rico as well, and give him a little bit of relief too. But I think that's what we have seen through all of fall camp, that we've got the ability to play for sure with those 3 guys, and we need to get the 4th one ready as well.
Luke, one of the questions on the outside about this defense coming into the season was how the D-line and the outside linebackers would perform without a Keanu or a Nick Herbig. After watching the film, what was your assessment of those 2 position groups in particular from the first game?
I thought they were the strength of our team. They did a great job. I thought that, sometimes it doesn't come up in the stat book. Right after the game, you could see the frustration, and at halftime you could see the frustration on some of those guys' face. But I think when that ball's in rhythm, when they're getting, they were not going to take a sack. I don't know that we had a tackle for loss or a sack. So the negative yardage plays were really difficult to come by, and I'm sure there was a part of a plan for them. Not that anybody wants to give up, minus yardage plays or sacks, but the idea of getting rid of the football, don't take in a sack, put themselves in situations where they're not behind the sticks. Our guys up front played really sound. They were, if I'd said that we were sloppy, in a lot of areas, it was not up front. I thought they did a really good football job. They didn't get overly frustrated with how the game was going and in the stats that weren't able to come their way. But when it came down to it, they did the job we needed to, especially on short yard situations.
Luke, over I think it was like 4 or 5 days ago, Mike Trillium was added to the roster. Just can you describe how that came about and what you've kind of learned about him in the last few days?
He did a great job in week one. We were obviously got a little thin on the tight end position, and it's hard to have some guys to help rep down there with the when you go exchange units. So he came in, got his acclimatization in really quick, and was probably not kind of like slow put into the program. He probably on Monday, Tuesday practice probably racked up around 50, 60 reps a day, and so it's a good thing we've got him, and good thing he was kind of ready to roll for us.
You mentioned wanting to roll through corners and get a fourth guy. I assume Mac is still, you're waiting to hear on that appeal for Mac?
Well, there is an appeal out.
I just didn't know if you had heard anything yet.
Well, originally, no. They said there'll be an appeal. I'm going to kind of hold my tongue to say anything about the Air Force Academy and how they've treated the kid, in my opinion. But we'll wait on what the NCAA. It's in their hands, and we
So
kind of leave it at that.
You weren't given was there
Yeah, he was denied.
and then you're
And then
appealing
there's an
denial.
appeal, which is tough. I understand that I'm not saying anything against the NCAA. It's in their hands. But at some point in time, I will say how I feel about the way he's been treated by where he went to school. And
I've talked to a few of your players about glue guys in the locker room, and somebody that's come up a few times.
guys?
Glue guys.
Oh, okay.
One of the guys that's come up a few times is Sean Timis, a guy that just seems like everybody. Yeah, you laugh. It seems like everybody has a good story about him. Just what have you learned about him since you've been?
I don't
in the
have any
program?
stories about. I just know that he's a guy that everybody enjoys to be around, and he keeps it light. And you need that, and especially in that group. I think that's a group that obviously is a really, really serious group, and we put a lot of pressure upon them, and we will continue to put pressure upon them. But he is a guy that does not take. I don't say it's bad. Take himself too seriously. He has a great sense of humor. He is a incredible team player, meaning that he's been here for a few years and he still doesn't bat an eye at going down there and being a part of the exchange and giving guys great looks and working every single day. You can't do what we do without having guys like that. And he goes even further. I think he does a lot more in that room for the rest of that group, just to make sure they kind of keep them level-headed and keep a smile on their face when it gets pretty nasty in those trenches, though.
I say, Luke, you had talked about finding a fourth cornerback. How close is someone like a Jonas DeClona or even like a Jace Arnold or anyone else in that cornerback room that could be that fourth cornerback?
Yeah, I mean that's where we were. That's where I was curious as to where Michael would fit in if he was able to play this year. But Jonas is definitely right now the next guy. Wish we would have played it, and he's going to play this year. I mean, he's a guy that we got to get on special teams now because he's not a guy we're trying to save for 4 games. He's a guy that's proven it all through camp. I mean, he's taken in the spring ball. He took all the 2 reps, I think, all through fall camp. He took basically majority of all, if not all, the 2 reps as well. He's there. We've got confidence in him. I just think that based on the situation, he didn't get an opportunity to go in last week, but this may be the week, just in particular at the tempo and the pace that they'll go with.
Luke, I know you had it in the past, but the team acronym on your
Yeah.
vest. Why is that important to you, and kind of what's the message there?
It's a reminder to myself. It's a reminder to all of us that we can't do this alone. And I think that it's even more important in today's world, right? I mean, everybody socially walks in the game afterwards, and whether you have stats or you don't have stats, and whether you got an opportunity to play or you didn't get an opportunity to play. And if we're going to be successful and we're going to play our best ball at the end of the year and we're going to continue to grow, we've got to be able to stay together. And no matter what, coaches as well. We can't get into one side of the ball. We can't say, well, how many yards do we have, or why didn't we have any sacks, or how many No, the idea is we got to win. The idea is we got to find ways to continue to get better and play complementary football in all phases. So it's a reminder. I'm not a big guy. I don't pound it every day and tell the guys every day. It's just a reminder to them that, hey, that together all of us will achieve more. If we aren't together, then we'll just be resting on our individual abilities, and I'm going to tell you that that's probably not going to be good enough.
You're probably going to roll your eyes when I ask this, but people ask me about it. You were dressed in black on one of the hottest days of the year, but that's kind of a thing for you, right? Like that's your game day attire. I mean, do you consider like just coming out in white or red or something else?
No, I don't. I mean, it's probably the same exact attire as every day at practice, whether it was we get later in the year where it's going to be 10 degrees out, or it's going to be what the day earlier in the year was 98 or 97, where they didn't want us to go outside, or they were starting to ask what we were doing different. And I'm like, we're doing nothing different. We're going to continue to practice and go about our business, be smart, but we're going to play in this. And it just happened to be game 1, hottest game in record. So I think we're ready for it. Johnny Cash.
How would you assess Kamoe's day? I know, obviously, you talked about the
Yeah.
tackles. There were some issues there?
Yeah, I think he struggled early. I think the thing we look at for him is more so the second half. I think that, you saw him say he settled down. I think we've got to have the ability with those guys to be able to roll a little bit too. And if a guy gets into a situation where they, get over aggressive, they get out of their, norm of what they need to do, then you got to be able to settle him down. And he's an emotional guy, and I love that about him. But I think that until the second half, I don't think he kind of calmed down a little bit. And, game one, I put it on myself a little bit too of trying to rile guys up. And all along, we have effort and attitude. Effort eliminates mistakes. And there was not a lack of effort. And I think it just, probably overtook him a little bit in the first half. He had some missed tackles. He had a missed leverage. But the good thing is when you look back at the second half, he was much more under control. He had some sure tackles, made some really good plays, and did a lot more things that he's going to need to do for us to continue to grow.
I have a non-football question for you.
Uh-oh.
As we're trying to get to know you better.
I don't talk a whole lot about non-football things.
Don't worry,
Go
don't
ahead.
worry. I promise. With your kids being college athletes, what does the Fickell family group message look like right now? And how are you, you have a very unique position as having kids who are college athletes and being a coach. You can kind of empathize. Kind of what do those game day texts look like?
Some of them talk to you a little bit more than the others. It just depends, You kind of let them do their thing a little bit too. I think that's probably the thing with us is as our kids, for the first time away from us, you want the ability to be there, and you can't, but you kind of let them grow themselves as well. And we're all there for each other. Like my daughter was in California this past weekend as we're playing, and my son obviously is in Cincinnati, and then my boys are playing on Friday night. So I think they do a better job at connecting with each other. I think when it's all said and done. But it's not the easiest thing in the world. And it's the first time we've really had to go through it because, we've never been apart. My daughter's obviously a freshman and my son was with us. So it is a little bit unique and different. But the good thing is there is communications. I think just some do it a little bit better. I think my daughter does it a little bit better than I do and definitely better than my oldest son.
Yeah, just building off that real quick. I mean, we saw you were down at the volleyball game in Indiana, and then obviously you were at the Edgewood game on Friday night. I mean, what's been finding that balance for you been like, and especially in these early stages?
There's not a whole lot of balance probably, but there's opportunities when they have them, you try to take them. And we were fortunate that was the first Saturday where we had a chance to breathe and got a chance to go over and spend a few hours there with my daughter and supporting her. And then, about 10 minutes at the Friday night game because it's hard. I mean, we make a specific for how we handle our Friday nights, and I kind of pound to the guys, it's about, you only get 12 guaranteed opportunities, and we're going to make these special, and we're going to hang out and be together. So, to be able to get away maybe for 10 minutes after dinner and then back over to hang out with the guys. The good thing is my family in particular understands. We're all in this together, and we know that as we took this journey, not just this one, but even the last one and the ones before that there's going to be some things that we have to give up. There's some things that we're going to have to sacrifice. But when we have opportunities, we're going to use them, and we're going to make sure they're quality time.
You said on Saturday you didn't see Tanner's first interception. Just going back and having a chance to watch the film, I mean, did you see anything different from his play or anything that you went back and wanted to talk to him about? What was kind of your second thoughts on
No,
getting to watch?
I saw the play. I just didn't see exactly how it happened. Or, I think we do a decent job at not replaying some of the plays on the scoreboard, which I think I might talk to. Sometimes I'd like to see, it's just so in your mind you can kind of clear it. I wasn't sure exactly what happened. I wasn't sure if it was somebody underneath. It was the guy that was covering him, undercut it. It's not one you got to talk a whole lot about, I mean, it wasn't a great throw. He underthrew the guy, and he knows that. He doesn't need a grown man to walk over there and ask him what happened and to say, hey, you underthrew that. Yeah, he knows he underthrew it. I think it's important on the other one, if he needed to, have somebody to talk to, I'm sure Coach Longo and them, making sure that if he didn't see where it came from as to why it happened. But in those times, he doesn't need another person like myself to come over and kind of ask him exactly what happened and try to give him a little bit of opinion of how to correct it. My big thing is to look at him to see what his demeanor's like. How does he handle it? And if you look at both those plays, who was the first guy down there to make the stop? And to me, that's a big deal. You know, you can hesitate, you could get mad, you can throw your hands up in the air, then all of a sudden you act like you're going to make the play and you don't. And in both of the interceptions, he made the play. The one he made the guy cut back, they ended up falling, but they end up getting no points out of that, you know, and he makes the tackle pretty much on the second one. And to me, that's more of what I want to see more than anything else.